Rabbi, I think we should just proceed. That's all.
Can you hear me? Whenever you're ready, Abe.
Okay.
Hey, Abe, do you hear me?
I do hear
Now
you.
I hear you pretty good, yes. Okay, so let's just hope let's get on with the program. And if I keep on going off, you don't want to. So Abe Fuchs, and Nick Alter, I know they're both on. So Abe was making an attempt to run as a primary challenger to
Nili Rozek.
Nili Rozek. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit shy here because of the situation. And he'll explain. He was held back. He was rejected ultimately due to well, he'll describe it.
Court roadblocks.
Roadblocks that he had to overcome.
Okay.
A lot of them. Oh no. Mitch was his lawyer, and I'd like them to till we have time, we can get some quick Q&A. That would be good. But if Abe, you can explain what was going on, I'll give the audience to you right now before we run into
Okay, let me proceed.
Want to be the reporter? I think he just went. Okay, go ahead, Rabbi. Hey?
Yeah, Rabbi, I'll proceed. Yeah. Okay, so
I'm recording it now.
Okay, so I'm looking at notes. I hope you bear with me.
Recording in progress.
Okay, got it. Okay.
You're recording me?
Yeah, recording.
Am I recording me, or you just want me to continue? Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's recording. If it's
you guys do what you want. I don't care.
Yeah, okay, fine. Okay. All right. So I want to say that we all know that politics is a competitive sport, but we don't want government-sanctioned roadblocks on the way to ballot access. It's difficult as it is for one person to get on a petition. Usually it's with the incumbents have multiple people on one petition, or somebody who was in politics who has a lot of name recognition. They can get on, but otherwise, if you have to get 500 signatures, you really have to get 1,500 signatures because the strikeout rate is so high. It's very hard to get a match.
Let me also add to that, Abe. The better signatures are not the ones you get in the street. The better signatures are the ones you get door to door when you use a roll.
Absolutely. But the problem is that a lot of times they're not home. They don't want to answer the door, etc. I just recently asked for a bid from a petition drive company, and they said it's $25,000 for 1,000 signatures. I don't remember the name now, but I have it.
It must be gold doubloons there, Abe.
Okay, all right. So I was lucky to find some people not part of the party establishment who were running in my area. I joined their petition. I couldn't supervise their petition drive because there was already an elections consultant who had a lot of experience. He didn't want me to interfere at all. Okay, but eventually.
Hey, who was that, by the way? Because I came in later on. Who's the election consultant? You remember?
I forget now. I have it.
Okay.
Okay, but unfortunately, eventually, our petitions were challenged, and as soon as they're challenged, you have to take it to court because there's a 14-day limit after the challenge is filed. There are a lot of deadlines with elections. You don't even know which way the Board of Elections will rule. Okay. Eventually, the Board of Elections report came back that I was 120 short, and like I said, there's some feedback.
I'm having a hard time. Abe, you're wobbling.
Yeah, I don't know why there's feedback. Is
somebody, there's some background noise someplace.
Yeah. Can everybody be muted because maybe it's coming from somebody?
Let me try. Try to mute you. So whoever's not talking, mute your mic.
Yeah. Everybody should be muted except for the speaker.
Let me mute my mic too, Abe. Hold on. And please just as you have to come on.
Okay, let's try it again. Okay, muted everyone. Okay. All right. So I just want to say the reason to go to court is because the Board of Elections.
Please unmute yourself and Mitch as well.
Okay, I'm proceeding.
Stalled.
Oh.
Abe, unmute yourself.
Unmute myself? Oh,
Abe, you're still muted.
oh,
I'm not muted.
oh, okay, okay.
He's probably.
Unmute my video. Got it. Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so it turned out you can hear me now, right? Okay, we can't hear you now, Rabbi.
That's because I'm muted. You hear me
Okay.
now?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So you hear me now. Okay. All right. So I'll go on. Okay. So the Board of Elections report came in. I was 120 short. The reason that you have to then take it to court is because the Board of Elections, being a government agency, they have problems with their software. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You can have problems with witnesses, the people who collect the petitions. They can move. They can be somewhere temporarily, and if they didn't put it on the right address, you have to explain it in court. Okay, so I got a lawyer who filed a validate case for me to validate my petitions, and concurrently, I was also served with an invalidate. The other side, Rabbi, your lips are okay. Your lips are moving. I don't know if you're talking to people in the car or whatever.
Abe, he's muted. You're the only one who's
Okay,
talking.
fine. I thought maybe he was trying to tell us something. Okay. So at the same time, I was served with an invalidate, because the same way how I took it to court to validate, the other side, my political opponents took it to court to invalidate. Unfortunately, the lawyer that I hired quit, and then I get the second lawyer. That's our friend here, Mitch Alter, and he joined me on a court Zoom hearing on April 27. I tell you that date because it's significant. Okay, so we had a little discussion. The next day, we were told we'd come to court. Okay, okay. So the next day, we come to physical court. Unfortunately, Mitch asked for an adjournment because he was only on my case for 1 day, and election time is very busy. Okay, so the judge, Tracy Fox, it admonishes him that we had a virtual talk, and you should have done it already. Anyway, Mitch cites a precedent, a case, Hollywood versus Layton, where you have 3 days from the Board of Election ruling to get. I'm sorry, he adjourned because we didn't have the certified records. Okay, okay. Now Michael Reich is the opponent, opposing attorney. He represents the Democratic Party from Queens County. And he jumps up and says, no, you got to dismiss this case. Why? Because he never got a notice of appearance and or an affidavit of service. Okay, so there was some mix-up with the previous lawyer. Mitch was only on the case for 1 day. And now, at the Zoom, Mitch said that he would be in court the next day. And he thought that the first lawyer would have served the affidavit of service. Anyway, Michael Reich says it should be dismissed with prejudice, meaning it can't be brought up again. Okay. Okay. So and the fact that Reich is there shows that he knew that the case is going forward. Okay. So later it turns out really that the affidavit of service was served. It was just in the wrong file. In other words, a clerical error. Okay. Right. Okay. So now I'm shocked that we're talking here about dismissal. But at least I hear that the judge says, okay, she's going to dismiss it, but not with prejudice, meaning we can try it again. But Reich goes on to say that his invalidate case should go forward. In other words, that she should grant him his invalidate case. So Mitch argues it's moot. The Board of Elections already ruled that I'm off the case, and the court case is only supposed to supersede to correct what the Board of Elections says. If I'm already off the ballot, now it's a question of letting my case go on. Okay, but Fox, the judge, agrees with the opponent, Reich, and she says that because we didn't have the certified records now, and she's not granting the adjournment, that there's no opposition to his invalidate case. So she's granting him that from a ruling that I'm off the ballot. But then she goes on to say, but that does not preclude you from going forward, that we can still revive our validate case. Okay, now that's the end of that. And now Judge Fox writes up two reports, one for the invalidate, the other one for the validate. Invalidate is on the merits. She found that we didn't have the evidence to go against it. She grants that case, but our case was dismissed only procedurally. Now I ask, is there a contradiction here? Because if we eventually prevail on the validate, wouldn't there be two opposing rulings from the case? Okay, so Mitch goes on to file the new case. He puts in the subpoena to the Board of Elections to get the certified records. He puts in my rebuttal form with all the voter identification numbers.
Hey man, point out that we had 24 hours to do that too. You know, we filed that, and we had to file it within a day and serve everybody within a day and be in front of court the following day.
Absolutely, and Mitch, you did a great job with that. Okay, the notations. Of course, he puts in the affidavit of service and notice of appearance. Okay, we finally get the new judge, Robert Colares. Now, Reich, the opposing lawyer, he argues to the new judge, don't hear this case. Don't hear this case. Why? Because his invalidation case already won. Shows that we have no case for the validate case. Okay, but Mitch says, no, the validation case was dismissed only procedurally. We have a green light to go ahead. Okay, Colares goes ahead and reads the reports from the old judge. Okay, so he sees that we quote we didn't have the evidence from the against the invalidation case. So he says, res judicata. There's some a legal concept, a Latin term that if there's a full and fair trial, matters that was settled already can't be brought up again. So if we didn't have the evidence for the invalidate case, then it's the same case. We don't have. It's considered that we don't have the evidence for the validate case. Okay, and he says the same issue. It's the same issues, same evidence, and he's going to dismiss this case because it was already settled by the invalidate case. Okay, he says, who am I to oppose the previous judge when she granted the invalidate case? Now I say, even when he's agreeing on the invalidate case, he's really opposing Fox, the old judge, on the validate case, because how do you go on? How does she grant the validate case if it's really a shell? If there's no way for the validate case to ever win, essentially, there's no substance to it. Okay, and then, but he had to explain. Colares, the second judge, had to explain why he considered it no evidence when all he asked was for an adjournment. He says, because there are constraints on elections, and you can't give it more time. Now, the reason I said earlier that the date is important is because we went to court April 28th. That's 2 full months before the primary. April 28th, May 28th, June 28th. That's 2 full months. And to say again, Mitch brought up the precedent that we had another day based on some case, Hollywood versus Layton, that we had 3 days from the ruling of the Board of Elections. Okay, so now that's the end of the second case, and now it goes, well, the second judge, I should say, and then it goes to the appeals court, and they agree with Colares's result with the denial of our case, but for different reasons. Now, I find that, I'm not a lawyer, I find that very suspicious. I ask, is that even permissible? You have the reasoning of the judge should be either correct or not. You shouldn't have to bail him out with a new reason. But anyway, the new reason that the appeals court says is that our exhibits weren't particularized. So I explain, I mean, to you now, that we had the rebuttal form with the voter identification numbers, we had the notations for witnesses. All that is to allow the testimony to for certified records and affidavits or oral testimony, whatever the case may be, to allow that to come to court. You cannot explain everything on the rebuttal form. There isn't even room for it. Obviously, you just make the notation just like the other ones made notations, and then you have to allow it to court. So I think this was a specious. Even the the appeals court already invalidated the reasoning of the second judge, and I say that what the appeals court came up with is just an excuse to leave in place the result, the denial from the second judge, because it's a bunch of baloney that it wasn't particularized. They were particularized. Anyway, we appeal again, and the second appeal, the last to go on the state level, all they wrote was denied. That was the whole story. Now that's my whole rap. Now, Mitch, you want to say from your standpoint what it looked like? Oops, Mitch, you're muted. Okay.
I'm unmuted now.
Go ahead.
I'm unmuted now. Anyway. All right. Glad to see everybody here tonight. Let me just tell you the problem that I see with these cases. They're all done in the election law calendar is such that it makes it, as Abe is correct, it almost makes it impossible for an insurgent, given the timelines, to try to put a case together successfully in court. They give you almost no time at all. The second case we brought, we had to give specifics in terms of what was wrong with the Board of Election ruling. And he's right. Within that short constraint of time, it makes it almost impossible to do that. Especially when I come into the case at the last minute. The problem is when the case is filed originally, way back when, I came into this case late, so I had to pick up the case, as Abe pointed out at the end. The problem is the appellate division decided to sustain the judge's opinion, not on the res judicata issue, but on another issue, which resulted from the specifications. I felt the specifications were good enough. They said no. I just, and the problem with it is, I would have loved to have had more time to draw a heavier set of specifications of tables and this and that. Who had the time to do this? The problem is, between Judge Catapano's decision and the time we had to bring this new case, we had 12 hours.
Yeah.
We had papers.
Yeah, but we made the notations. We cited the voter identification numbers. All they have to do is allow the certified records and the testimony, whether affidavits or oral. All they have to do is allow it to come in. Then they have all the evidence they want.
I understand that, Abe, and I think the court, gave us short shrift on that. I disagree with the court's decision, but what you do, you stuck with it. They're a big hurry on these cases, and they just went ahead and just glossed it right over. I agree that decision was not correct, but what can you do?
Okay, and there's nothing we can do short of a federal case to open, which I didn't have the money for, $100,000 or something. But the point is,
you never asked me to do that, Abe, but
no.
The problem with the federal courts are you run into the Rooker-Feldman case. Once the state court determines the case against you, you've got no place to go. And it's called the case.
But if you go to the federal level, then they can look at it. To me,
you have to go from the Court of Appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court. You can't go to the district court.
Right. Okay. To U.S.
Hey, can I say something here, Abe?
Go ahead.
I mean, we're not lawyers. We're not election lawyers.
Mitch is a lawyer.
We're citizens. What is the point of this whole discussion other than to imply to us that this is like a good old boy network and the cards are stacked against you and you're going to knock your Hasekup and knock your head against the wall?
Okay, Mr. Grossman.
Joe, that's a mouthful. What you just
said. May I answer that question, Mr. Grossman?
Go ahead.
Can I answer that question, Abe?
Go ahead.
The thing is, when you're an insurgent, and Abe was right about this, the only way you're going to get on that ballot is you have to have what's called a bulletproof petition, meaning you've got to have enough good signatures in there that they can't be challenged. And that is a tough road to hoe, given the fact that you got to come up with 500 valid signatures in order to qualify for the assembly. That means you have to have a good organization in place way ahead of time.
But Mitch, I had 600. I had over 600. They were deathly afraid to allow my case to be heard. You see how hard they
Abe, they
work.
didn't want you on the ballot.
Okay, so Joe, that's the issue. And why
Right,
am
I
okay,
understand.
but wait a minute. Why am I talking about it here? Whether you were a supporter of me or not, we have to have a system where they allow outsiders to come in and challenge the establishment. If we don't have that, we're a banana republic. Okay, isn't that an important issue, Joe?
You gotta have the party, the people, and the money to do it.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
No. You're wasting your time because you're conceding that it's a corrupt system. If you're saying you have to have the party, yeah, I ran as a Democrat. I was a Democrat. I am a Democrat.
But what Lou Grossman is telling you, Abe, is that in order to do this in an organized fashion, you've got to have the organization in place. It doesn't have to be the party. You have to have your own organization in place. You have to have the ability to get on that ballot with your own people.
Okay, but
And you gotta have the money, and you have to have the money to pull it off.
But look,
it's a difficult entry.
But wait a minute. I had the
By the way, I don't disagree with you, Mr. Grossman. I see. I get his name.
Mitch and Joe, listen to me. I had the money. I had the signatures. Okay, somebody's in the background talking.
Louis, mute yourself. Louis Grossman. Louis Grossman, mute yourself.
Okay, all right. We hope to get out at some point of a code, but I don't know.
Grossman is not muted. They don't realize.
Okay,
Louis Grossman, mute yourself.
Grossman, muted. Okay, can we shut her down? Can we shut her down? Where's the host?
Yeah, you gotta love this.
On Thursday.
Rabbi, can you mute everybody?
So we can.
How about you muting yourself? Okay, you're out of order.
You can't. They're not listening. They can't even hear.
Very disappointed in you.
Who's disappointed in who?
Be well. Okay, take care. Bye bye.
Molly. Okay, good. Hopefully it stops now. The
Why
point.
do you come up, Joe, with that big mouth?
What are you talking about, David? No one else says anything. If you don't like it, don't come into the system.
Wait a minute. What are we arguing about now?
There's no reason to argue about it. Gentlemen, why don't we get back to the discussion so we don't waste each other's time on this one?
Joe, listen to me for a second. I had the money, and I had the signatures. Point is, they were there at the last minute to stop me from getting hurt. Obviously, they spent a lot of time and money not to allow my case to go forward. That means that they were afraid to hear my case. So if they're afraid to hear my case, despite the obstacles that you mentioned, I was able to overcome those, and I was at the point where it wasn't the cleanest petition where I could just sail in with no problem. Yes, I had to go to court and I had to argue it, but they wouldn't allow that. The point is, if nobody talks about this and nobody knows about it, and the press doesn't care because nobody else cares, then they're allowed to go ahead and do this all the time. Is that what we want? Is that not an issue?
By the way, hey, you have to be right. We should have this. We have to be right on this. I mean, the problem is, the problem is, as Mr. Farr was, the election law has so many restrictions in it. It makes it very tough. New York is one of the toughest states in the world to get on the ballot because of the ballot access.
But they didn't even play by the rules. The second judge was repudiated by the appeals court, and they had to come up with a new junk thing to come up with.
It's a good old boys network.
Okay, so
that makes it very difficult to have entry. That's all I said.
So in other words, I should be discouraged, and other people should be discouraged, and you'll have the same old junk that you always have.
Abe,
you need to be better organized.
It's easy to say this looking backwards, but instead of getting 600, you should have had the organization to have 1,000 or 1,500 signatures.
That's right. That's right. And you should be, a billionaire, and you should be 6 feet tall. We can't control
Dave,
things.
you want to run. listen, you want to run, let me make it, I agree with the two of you. You want to run, you need to have the operation in place to do it, both the signatures
But you
as well as
no,
street operation.
Mitch, you're talking from a lawyer's standpoint. We also
What
need,
else am
but
I supposed to talk from?
listen, we cannot be hampered by government obstructions, by government roadblocks. That whatever limitations we have, we don't need further
So how you,
roadblocks and
Abe, what
limitations
do you
from
suggest?
government. What?
What do you suggest? I mean, we're here,
So
you know.
I tell you what I suggest. I tell you, if the community was more aware and alert and vigilant about this, maybe they wouldn't be allowed to get away with this. These guys are sitting there like fat cats, raking in the money, controlling the courts, because that's not just my opinion. I've read that in the press, not widely because they don't talk much about this, but I have seen some articles. And the point is, if we want, Rabbi Schoenfeld always talks about having our own Al Sharptons or whatever. You cannot have activists run for against the establishment if the courts are going to stand in their way.
Okay. I'm not disputing that.
Okay. Who else wants to say something?
Anybody got some questions for me? Because I'm here to answer questions too, right, Abe?
Yeah, right.
I have a question.
I'll be happy. Who had the pleasure of talking with?
My name is Bernice Fartman.
Okay, Ms. Fartman.
My
name is Bernard. My name is Mitch Halter, by the way. Good afternoon.
Okay. I'm just curious how someone like AOC at the beginning, who was a total unknown, how did she get on the ballot?
She had a good organization. She had those Democratic Socialists.
Bernice,
really,
that's an excellent question.
I'll tell you how she got on the ballot. She filed a petition that was basically what you call bulletproof. She needs 450 signatures. She came with close to 4,000 signatures, Abe, and they were solid signatures based upon.
Okay.
Wait a minute, let me finish. You asked me a question. Can I finish my thought?
Sure, go ahead.
I want to ask Ms. Farman's question. She needs 1,250 signatures to get on the ballot. That woman came in with close to 5,000 signatures. She had a tremendous a group of people working for her to get her on that ballot, and there was no way the county could get rid of her because she had too many good signatures, and she got them door to door.
Good. Okay, understood. But here's the thing, Bernice, we can't all be as powerful and have the grassroots support and strength that an AOC has. I just want you to know that with AOC and people like that, the progressive movement is very strong. There's real ethnic unity there. And unfortunately, in a community like ours, we don't have that kind of zeal. We don't have that kind of unison. To get people to go to the polls, to get people to stand behind an activist, no. Our community is usually falling behind the leader. That's a separate question. But at least to have an opposition there to show the community or anyone else what options there are, that we don't have to go for
Abe, you're in a tough system. The only way you're going to be able to do this is by organizing yourself and getting that committee going.
I know, Mitch, you keep repeating that, but the point is, I'm trying to bring out that if the court system, and in fact, I didn't even go into it, the BOE with their complications, with their screw ups and everything. I mean, they gave us one day, a few hours to rebut their report. There was no way to go over 1,600 signatures and scan it in by 3 o'clock via PDF. And they didn't even tell you the email address. It is so disorganized. It's so dysfunctional. Their software doesn't work. They don't understand the laws. I mean, yeah, you have a lot of stuff going against you, but people have to know about this. That's all I'm saying, Joe, or anybody else. If we don't have the strength, if we don't have the unity, at least we should know what we're up against. Anybody else?
That's call for trying.
Look.
But I think Bernice brought up an excellent point.
Yes.
And Joe, you did too. But it's very disheartening that someone like Abe can make every effort and then come up empty because of they stacked the odds against them and the system against him. But AOC, that's a case in point, where she came out of nowhere and she toppled the king. Joe Crowley ruled. He ruled the club when he was, in Queens, and she was able to topple him eventually. So I don't know. Maybe because she had the progressives, and therefore they just wanted to have a new king, and they
They
saw her
had
coming
the
along.
she
I
Joe
had
don't
the
know.
Crowley
ethnic
didn't want to challenge it. Joe Crowley just didn't challenge him. You know what I mean?
her.
You know, anyone could challenge anyone, and Joe Crowley didn't challenge her. You
He had
know?
no.
Okay,
Hey,
but
listen, Mr. Noble. He had no basis for challenge. He couldn't do it. He could sat there for the next 10 years. He could sat there for the next 10 years and had no basis to
okay,
challenge.
but let's
You should see that.
remember.
You should see that petition.
But let's
Well,
remember.
you
She just
know, what's her name? Toby Savitsky challenges Stefano all the time.
okay. But
Like, I'm
look,
not talking about. So you asked me about AOC.
Well, I'm
I'm,
just
I'm
telling you, Toby Savitsky has been around a long time, like Joe Crowley, and she challenges Stefano.
okay,
Ask
but
Stefano.
Danny
What
Noble,
goes
you have to
on?
remember, she just got on the ballot, and he had to fight her on the vote, and she had the grassroots support because with Hispanics, there's a certain ethnic affinity they feel, maybe because they feel like a minority, they band together. And the progressive thing is very aggressive and very mobilized. We don't have
They
that. So
even tried to challenge Vicky last year. Joanne tried to throw Vicky Palladino off the
who
ballot.
do you think? Who do you think was Vicky? Hold on a minute, brother. Wait a minute. Okay, now you're talking about something I know about. Okay, who do you think? Who do you think was Vicky's lawyer? And beat her in court.
you.
You know, Vicky beat her in court, and then me and Joe Kincannon, okay, our case.
Now wait a minute. Now hold on. You
We
want
won
to talk
on
about
one
Vicky?
court.
Hold on,
Danny,
Mr.
let him
Noble. Wait
speak.
a minute now. Hold on, brother. I was the one that beat that challenge. Okay.
Very good. Very good. We didn't know. That's very good. Okay. So anyway,
Look, it is 7:35. It is 7:35.
okay.
So my phone. I'm not the host, so if I shut down, it's not going to shut down everybody. But I certainly have to leave. And those who want to stay, I guess you're free to stay on. But officially, this program at 7:35 does have to come to an end. So I'm just going to thank you
The
both.
whole thing I want to say that we won in a case we had to go to appellate's court. The judges in the regular case we didn't win. And we went all the way to appellate's court and we won in the case because they were corrupt.
Which case are you talking about, Danny?
That was the case when the case with Mayo, one of his cases,
Okay.
he had a case where they were
All right, Danny.
we made
can't.
some notes.
All right, we can't go on. The rabbi is finishing. I think we should just.
But I'm just telling you
okay.
that you're right. That the system is corrupt, and we saw it the previous year.
Got it, Danny.
You know?
Thank you very much.
And it's not just in your case,
Okay,
but
Danny.
that's what I'm trying to say.
Let's stop there. So, thank you very much, Rabbi, for allowing us this opportunity to air this issue.
Okay.
Rabbi, you still there?